Ethan Maxwell had always been a man of ambition. From a young age, he knew he wanted more out of life than the modest circumstances of his childhood could offer. Through sheer determination and an unwavering work ethic, Ethan built a business empire that catapulted him into the upper echelons of society. By the time he reached 45, he had amassed a fortune that most people could only dream of. His name was synonymous with success, and his life was a testament to the power of hard work and perseverance. Yet for all the trappings of wealth and success, luxury cars, sprawling estates, and global recognition, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. Ethan's home, a vast mansion perched on a hill overlooking the city, was a marvel of modern architecture. It was a place that commanded attention, with its sleek lines, towering windows, and meticulously manicured gardens. Inside, the house was filled with everything money could buy: exquisite artwork, custom furniture, and the latest technology. Yet for all its splendor, the mansion felt cold and lifeless. It was a place designed to impress, not to live in. The rooms echoed with a silence that was almost oppressive, a constant reminder of the absence of life within its walls. Ethan spent most of his days alone, moving through the vast spaces with a sense of detachment. He had no family to share his life with, no close friends to confide in. The people who surrounded him were mostly business associates, employees, or acquaintances who admired his wealth but knew little about the man behind it. Ethan's daily routine was as meticulously planned as his business ventures. He woke up at the same time every morning, his alarm clock set to the minute. After a quick workout in his private gym, he would eat a solitary breakfast prepared by his personal chef. Then, dressed in one of his tailored suits, he would head to his office, where he spent hours overseeing his various business interests. The day was a blur of meetings, phone calls, and emails, all aimed at maintaining and expanding his empire. In the evening, Ethan would return home to an empty house, where he would either work late into the night or unwind with a glass of expensive whiskey. This was his life, day in and day out. It was a life of routine, efficiency, and success, but it was also a life devoid of joy, spontaneity, and connection. Despite his achievements, Ethan couldn't escape a nagging sense of dissatisfaction. He often found himself lying awake at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering if this was all there was to life. He had everything he had ever wanted: money, power, status, yet he felt strangely unfulfilled. There was a void inside him, a hollow space that all his wealth and success couldn't fill. It was a feeling he couldn't quite articulate, even to himself. All he knew was that something was missing, something essential, but what it was he couldn't say. He pushed these thoughts aside, telling himself that they were just the price of success, a small sacrifice for the life he had built. One morning, as Ethan set out for his usual run through the affluent neighborhood surrounding his mansion, he couldn't help but notice how beautiful everything was. The sun was just beginning to rise, casting a golden glow over the perfectly manicured lawns and tree-lined streets. The air was crisp and cool, a perfect morning for a run. Yet, as Ethan jogged past the rows of elegant houses, each more impressive than the last, he felt an inexplicable sense of emptiness. The beauty of his surroundings only seemed to accentuate the void inside him. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was merely going through the motions, running in circles without any real purpose or direction. As he continued his run, lost in his thoughts, something caught his attention. Up ahead, a little girl was playing near the sidewalk, her laughter echoing through the quiet street. She was chasing after a butterfly, her face lit up with joy. The sight of the girl was a stark contrast to the sterile perfection of the neighborhood. She was full of life, her energy and innocence a reminder of something Ethan had long forgotten. Without realizing it, he slowed down, his eyes fixed on the girl as she darted back and forth, completely absorbed in her game. Ethan was about to continue on his way when the girl suddenly stopped and turned to look at him. For a moment, their eyes met, and Ethan felt a strange sense of recognition, though he couldn't place where it came from. The girl smiled brightly and, with the fearless curiosity of a child, ran up to him. "I know you," she said, her voice filled with excitement. "Your photo is in my dad's wallet." The words took Ethan by surprise. He had never seen this girl before, yet she spoke as if they were old friends. The idea that his photo was in someone's wallet, a stranger's wallet, was both puzzling and unsettling. He felt a rush of emotions, confusion, curiosity, and a faint flicker of something he hadn't felt in a long time, something close to hope. Intrigued by the girl's statement, Ethan knelt down to her level and asked gently, "Who's your dad? And why does he have my photo?" The girl, whose name was Sophie, didn't hesitate. "My dad's name is Lucas," she said proudly. "He talks about you sometimes. He says you're important." Ethan's heart skipped a beat at the mention of the name. Lucas. It was a name he hadn't heard in years, a name he had tried to bury along with the memories attached to it. Lucas was his younger brother, the one he had lost touch with long ago. They had once been close, but life had taken them in different directions, and over time they had drifted apart. The thought of Lucas carrying his photo after all these years was both baffling and deeply moving. Sophie, sensing Ethan's interest, tugged at his hand. "Do you want to meet him? He's at home, I can show you." Ethan hesitated. A part of him wanted to walk away, to avoid reopening old wounds, but another part of him was drawn to the idea of seeing Lucas again. The curiosity was too strong to ignore. What had happened to his brother? Why had they lost touch? And why did Lucas still keep a photo of him? The questions swirled in his mind, pushing him to follow Sophie as she led him down the street. As they approached Sophie's home, Ethan felt a mixture of anticipation and anxiety. The house was modest, a stark contrast to the grandeur of Ethan's mansion, but it was warm and inviting. Sophie ran ahead, calling out to her father. "Dad! Dad! I brought someone to see you!" Ethan stood at the entrance, unsure of what to expect. A moment later, the door opened, and there stood Lucas, looking almost exactly as Ethan remembered him, though older, more weathered by life. The sight of his brother after so many years was like a punch to the gut. Memories flooded back, of their childhood, of the bond they once shared, of the arguments that had driven them apart. For a moment, neither of them spoke. They just stared at each other, the weight of the years hanging between them. Finally, Lucas broke the silence. "Ethan," he said quietly, his voice tinged with a mix of surprise and emotion. "It's been a long time." Ethan nodded, unable to find the right words. He had so many questions, but he didn't know where to start. The gap between them felt too wide, too filled with unspoken grievances and regrets. Yet there was something in Lucas's eyes that told him that maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late to bridge that gap. The initial shock of the reunion gave way to a more complex mix of emotions. As they sat down in the living room, the air between them was thick with tension. Ethan noticed the signs of wear and tear in the house, scratches on the furniture, toys scattered on the floor, a stack of bills on the counter. It was clear that Lucas had been through some tough times. The brothers exchanged pleasantries, but the conversation soon turned to the more difficult topics they had both been avoiding for years. Lucas spoke of his struggles after his wife passed away, leaving him to raise Sophie on his own. He talked about the financial difficulties, the emotional toll, and the loneliness of being a single parent. Ethan listened, feeling a pang of guilt for not being there, for letting the distance between them grow so vast. As they talked, it became clear that the rift between them was not just the result of time and distance, but also of unresolved issues and misunderstandings. Ethan had always assumed that Lucas resented him for his success, for leaving their hometown and pursuing a life of wealth and luxury. Lucas, on the other hand, had felt abandoned, left to fend for himself while Ethan chased his dreams. The photo in Lucas's wallet was a reminder of the brother he once knew, the brother he had hoped would come back one day. Ethan, for his part, began to see how much he had missed out on. He had been so focused on building his empire, on achieving his goals, that he had neglected the people who mattered most. The success he had worked so hard for suddenly seemed hollow in comparison to the love and connection he had lost. He realized that Lucas's struggles were not just his own, but should have been shared between them, as brothers. The weight of this realization was heavy, but it also brought with it a sense of possibility. Maybe it wasn't too late to make things right, to rebuild what had been lost. The conversation was difficult, filled with moments of anger, sadness, and regret, but it was also cathartic. For the first time in years, Ethan and Lucas were truly talking, not just as estranged family members, but as brothers. They acknowledged the pain they had caused each other, the mistakes they had made, and the time they had lost. There were no easy solutions, no quick fixes, but there was a sense of hope, a hope that they could start to mend their relationship, to become the family they once were. As the day turned to evening, Sophie brought out a photo album filled with pictures of her and her father, of family moments and memories. As Ethan flipped through the pages, he saw a life he had missed, a life filled with love, laughter, and even hardship. It was a life that was very different from his own, but it was also a life that had value, that had meaning. Sophie pointed to a picture of her father as a young man standing next to a much younger Ethan. "That's you," she said, smiling. "Dad says you were the best big brother ever." The words hit Ethan hard. He had been so focused on his own life that he had forgotten what it meant to be a brother, to be there for someone who needed him. That night, as Ethan left Lucas's house, he felt a mix of emotions. The visit had stirred up old memories and emotions, but it had also given him something he hadn't felt in a long time, a sense of purpose. He knew that reconnecting with Lucas wouldn't be easy, that it would take time and effort, but he also knew that it was something he wanted, something he needed. As he walked back to his mansion, the cold, empty halls seemed even more lifeless than before. For the first time in years, Ethan felt a yearning for something more, something real. He realized that the void he had been trying to fill with wealth and success could only be filled with love, with family, with the connections he had lost. And so he resolved to do whatever it took to rebuild those connections, to make things right with his brother, and to find the fulfillment that had always eluded him. Ethan Maxwell had spent most of his life believing that success was measured by the size of his bank account, the number of properties he owned, and the accolades he received in the business world. Yet, after the weekend spent with Lucas and Sophie, his perspective began to shift in ways he hadn't anticipated. The cold, imposing walls of his mansion no longer seemed to reflect his achievements. Instead, they echoed the emptiness that had been growing inside him for years. That weekend had brought warmth, laughter, and a sense of belonging that Ethan had almost forgotten existed. As he watched Sophie play and saw the tentative but genuine smiles on Lucas's face, Ethan realized that he was on the brink of a profound transformation, one that would change the course of his life forever. The decision to invite Lucas and Sophie to his mansion had been driven by a desire to reconnect, but the experience had done more than just rekindle old bonds. It had opened Ethan's eyes to the glaring void in his life, a void that could not be filled by wealth or success, but only by the love and connection of family. The mansion, once a symbol of his solitary triumphs, was slowly being transformed into something more, a home. The joy and warmth that Lucas and Sophie had brought with them had lingered even after they left, leaving Ethan with a deep sense of longing. He no longer wanted his house to be just a place of luxury. He wanted it to be filled with the laughter, love, and shared experiences that made life truly rich. In the days that followed, Ethan found himself thinking constantly about how he could sustain the connection he had begun to rebuild with his brother and niece. He knew that the weekend had been just the first step, a foundation on which to build a deeper relationship. The challenge now was to ensure that this connection didn't fade away once the novelty wore off. Ethan was determined not to let that happen. He wanted Lucas and Sophie to be a permanent part of his life, not just occasional visitors. To achieve this, he needed to make changes, not just in his lifestyle, but in his very approach to life. One of the first changes Ethan made was to delegate more of his business responsibilities. For years, he had been the driving force behind every major decision in his companies, but he now realized that this constant involvement had come at the cost of his personal relationships. He began to trust his senior management team more, empowering them to take on roles that he had previously micromanaged. This was a difficult adjustment for Ethan, who was used to being in control, but it was also liberating. For the first time in years, he found himself with free time time that he could spend not in pursuit of profit, but in pursuit of something far more valuable, the rebuilding of his family ties. With this newfound time, Ethan began to visit Lucas and Sophie regularly. These visits were informal and unplanned, sometimes just stopping by for dinner or to help out with small tasks around the house. Each visit brought new opportunities to connect. Ethan helped Lucas with home repairs, a task that was foreign to him, but which he found surprisingly satisfying. There was something grounding about working with his hands, about fixing something tangible rather than abstract business problems. These moments of shared labor allowed the brothers to talk in a way they hadn't in years, their conversations moving from the superficial to the deeply personal. They spoke about their childhood, about the paths that had led them to where they were, and about the regrets they both harbored. Slowly, the walls that had been built up over years of separation began to crumble. Sophie, too, became a central figure in Ethan's life. Her innocent questions and boundless energy brought light into his world in a way that nothing else had. Ethan found himself looking forward to the time he spent with her, whether it was helping with her homework, taking her to the park, or simply listening to her talk about her day. Sophie's presence was a reminder of the simple joys of life, joys that Ethan had long neglected in his pursuit of success. She was a bridge between him and Lucas, a living symbol of the family bond they were working to restore. As Ethan grew closer to Sophie, he also grew closer to Lucas, each moment spent together weaving a stronger fabric of connection. Despite his efforts, Ethan knew that reconnecting with his family would not be a quick or easy process. There were years of distance and unspoken hurt that needed to be addressed. Lucas, though grateful for Ethan's renewed presence in his life, was still wary. He had built a life without his brother's involvement, and there was an underlying fear that this newfound closeness might not last. Ethan sensed this and knew that it would take time to fully rebuild the trust that had been lost. He was determined, however, to prove that this time he was in it for the long haul. As the bond between the brothers grew stronger, Ethan began to think about how he could do more than just be a part of Lucas and Sophie's lives. He wanted to contribute in a meaningful way to help alleviate some of the burdens that Lucas had been carrying alone for so long. Financial support seemed like an obvious solution, given Ethan's resources, but he knew that simply writing a check wouldn't address the deeper issues. What Lucas needed was not just money, but a partner, someone who would stand by his side, share in his struggles, and work towards a common goal. One evening, as they sat on Lucas's porch after dinner, Ethan broached the subject of how he could help. He offered financial assistance, expecting it to be a welcome relief, but Lucas's reaction took him by surprise. "I appreciate the offer, Ethan, I really do," Lucas said, his voice sincere but firm. "But what Sophie and I need more than anything is you. Not your money, but your time, your presence. We've managed so far without financial help, and we'll keep managing. What I want is for us to do something together, something that matters to both of us." Ethan was taken aback by Lucas's response, but as he thought about it, he realized how much sense it made. Money could solve immediate problems, but it couldn't buy the kind of connection they were both seeking. Lucas didn't want to be a charity case. He wanted to rebuild their relationship on equal footing as brothers working side by side. Ethan respected that and began to think about what they could do together that would honor both their past and their present. After much discussion, the idea of reviving the local community center emerged as the perfect project. The center had once been a vibrant part of their neighborhood, a place where they had spent countless hours as children. It was where they had learned to swim, played basketball, and made friends. Over the years, however, it had fallen into disrepair, a victim of neglect and dwindling community resources. For both Ethan and Lucas, the community center held deep sentimental value, and the idea of bringing it back to life resonated with both of them. The decision to take on the community center's revival marked a new chapter in Ethan's life. It was a project that combined his business skills with his desire to reconnect with his roots. He threw himself into the work with the same dedication he had once reserved for his business ventures, but this time the rewards were different. The project was about more than just success. It was about giving back, about creating something that would benefit others and bring people together. Ethan used his connections to secure funding and resources for the project. He reached out to former colleagues, business partners, and even competitors, rallying them to the cause. His reputation in the business world lent credibility to the project, and soon, donations began to pour in. But Ethan didn't just want to be the financial backer, he wanted to be involved in every aspect of the work. He attended planning meetings, helped draft proposals, and spent long hours at the community center overseeing renovations. It was hard work, but it was also deeply satisfying. For the first time in years, Ethan felt that he was part of something larger than himself, something that would have a lasting impact. Lucas, too, was fully committed to the project. While Ethan handled the fundraising and logistics, Lucas took charge of the physical work. He was on site every day, coordinating with contractors, supervising volunteers, and rolling up his sleeves to do the heavy lifting. The community center began to transform before their eyes, from a neglected building into a space that was once again vibrant and welcoming. The walls were repainted, the floors were redone, and new equipment was installed. But more than just the physical changes, the project brought a renewed sense of hope and pride to the neighborhood. People who had long since lost faith in the community began to show up, offering their time and skills to help with the renovation. Sophie was also a constant presence at the community center, her youthful energy and enthusiasm inspiring everyone around her. She helped with everything from organizing supplies to painting walls, and her excitement about the project was contagious. For Ethan, seeing Sophie so involved brought him immense joy. It reminded him of the importance of family, of the legacy he wanted to leave behind, not just for her, but for future generations. As the project progressed, the bond between Ethan and Lucas grew even stronger. They worked together seamlessly, each contributing their unique strengths to the project. The long hours and hard work created a new level of understanding between them as they faced challenges together and celebrated each milestone. Their relationship, once strained and distant, was now one of mutual respect, trust, and genuine affection. They had moved beyond the hurts of the past, focusing instead on the future they were building together. The community center became a symbol of this newfound connection. It was more than just a building. It was a testament to what they could achieve when they worked together, a physical manifestation of their shared values and goals. For Ethan, the project was also a personal journey of redemption. It allowed him to reconnect with his past, to honor the memories of his childhood, and to give back to the community that had shaped him. It was a way to atone for the years he had spent chasing success at the expense of the people who mattered most. The grand reopening of the community center was a moment of triumph for both brothers. The event drew a large crowd, including many of the people who had contributed to the renovation. There were speeches, performances, and a palpable sense of celebration in the air. As Ethan stood alongside Lucas and Sophie, looking out at the smiling faces of their neighbors, he felt a deep sense of fulfillment. This was the culmination of all their hard work, but it was also the beginning of something new, a future filled with possibility, connection, and hope. The experience of working on the community center had changed Ethan in profound ways. It had shown him that true success was not measured in material wealth, but in the impact one could have on the lives of others. It had also brought him closer to Lucas and Sophie, creating a bond that was stronger than ever. For Ethan, the project was not just about rebuilding a community center. It was about rebuilding his life, about finding meaning and purpose in relationships rather than in the pursuit of wealth. As he reflected on the journey that had brought him to this point, Ethan realized that he had found something far more valuable than anything money could buy. He had found a family, a community, and a sense of belonging that had eluded him for so long. The mansion, once a symbol of his solitary success, had been transformed into a place of warmth, love, and connection. And for Ethan, this was the greatest success of all. The project at the community center became a cornerstone of Ethan's new life. He continued to be actively involved, not just as a benefactor, but as a participant in the daily activities and events that took place there. The center thrived, becoming a vibrant hub for the neighborhood, offering programs for children, support groups for adults, and a space for the community to come together. Ethan's involvement wasn't limited to financial contributions. He volunteered his time, sharing his business expertise in workshops and mentoring young entrepreneurs who were just starting out. His presence at the community center was a constant reminder of his commitment to the values of service, connection, and giving back. Lucas, too, remained deeply involved in the center's operations. His hands-on approach and practical skills were invaluable, and he became a respected leader within the community. The project had given Lucas a renewed sense of purpose, and his relationship with Ethan had flourished as a result. The two brothers, once estranged, were now closer than ever, united by their shared commitment to the community and to each other. Their bond was no longer defined by the past, but by the future they were building together. For Sophie, the community center became a second home. She grew up surrounded by the positive energy of the center, learning valuable lessons about the importance of service, empathy, and community engagement. As she matured, Sophie took on more responsibilities at the center, organizing events, leading youth programs, and even starting her own initiatives to support local causes. She was a natural leader, her enthusiasm and dedication inspiring everyone around her. For Ethan, watching Sophie grow into a compassionate, driven young woman was one of the greatest joys of his life. He felt a deep sense of pride in her achievements, knowing that he had played a role in shaping the person she was becoming. The transformation that began with the community center extended beyond the project itself. Ethan's priorities had shifted, and he no longer measured his success by the growth of his business empire or the accumulation of wealth. Instead, he found fulfillment in the relationships he had nurtured, the lives he had touched, and the positive impact he had made on his community. The once solitary millionaire had become a beloved figure within the neighborhood, known not just for his generosity but for his genuine commitment to the well-being of others. As the years passed, Ethan's focus on family and community deepened. He continued to be involved in the community center, but he also found new ways to give back. He established scholarships for underprivileged youth, funded local arts programs, and supported initiatives that promoted social justice and equality. Each new project was an opportunity for Ethan to contribute to a cause that was close to his heart, to use his resources and influence for the greater good. Through it all, Ethan remained closely connected to Lucas and Sophie. Their bond had been forged in the fires of reconciliation and shared purpose, and it only grew stronger with time. They celebrated holidays together, supported each other through challenges, and shared in the joys of everyday life. For Ethan, these moments of connection were the true measure of his success. They were a reminder that the wealth he had once pursued so relentlessly was nothing compared to the richness of love, family, and community. The mansion, once a cold and empty symbol of Ethan's solitary achievements, had been transformed into a place of warmth, love, and life. It was a home in the truest sense of the word, a place where family gathered, where memories were made, and where the values of service and connection were lived out every day. For Ethan, this transformation was the culmination of his journey, a journey that had taken him from the heights of material success to the depths of personal fulfillment. As he reflected on the path that had brought him here, Ethan felt a deep sense of gratitude. He was grateful for the second chance he had been given to rebuild his relationships with Lucas and Sophie, to reconnect with his roots, and to find a purpose that went beyond the pursuit of wealth. He was grateful for the community that had welcomed him back with open arms, and for the opportunity to make a difference in the lives of others. Most of all, he was grateful for the love and connection that now filled his life, a love that had transformed him in ways he could never have imagined. Ethan Maxwell's story is one of redemption, of the power of love and connection to heal old wounds and create new possibilities. It is a story of a man who, after years of chasing success, discovered that the true measure of a life well lived is not found in material wealth, but in the relationships we build, the love we give, and the impact we make on the world around us. For Ethan, the greatest success of all was not the wealth he had accumulated, but the family and community he had found, and the legacy of love, service, and connection he would leave behind. The community center had become more than just a project for Ethan, Lucas, and Sophie. It was the heart of their new lives, a place where their shared purpose and commitment to each other and their community converged. What had started as a way to reconnect with his brother and niece had evolved into a mission that gave Ethan a profound sense of fulfillment he had never known. The center's revival had sparked something larger than any of them had anticipated, bringing together people from all walks of life to contribute to something meaningful. It was a symbol of renewal, not just for the building itself, but for the lives it touched. As the community center's activities grew, so did its influence. It became a hub of support and opportunity for the entire neighborhood. Ethan's leadership, combined with Lucas's practical know-how and Sophie's youthful energy, turned the center into a beacon of hope. Programs for children, adults, and seniors were established, each one designed to meet the needs of the community. After-school tutoring for kids, job training workshops for adults, and social clubs for seniors became regular fixtures. The center also hosted events that brought the community together: holiday celebrations, cultural festivals, and charity drives. The once dilapidated building was now a thriving, vibrant space that echoed with laughter, learning, and love. Ethan threw himself into the work with a passion that surprised even him. His role went beyond just financing the center's operations. He was deeply involved in its day-to-day activities. He spent hours meeting with staff and volunteers, brainstorming new initiatives and forging partnerships with local businesses and organizations. His business acumen, once solely focused on profit, was now channeled into creating sustainable programs that could continue to benefit the community for years to come. Ethan found that the skills he had honed in the corporate world were incredibly valuable in this new context. Negotiating deals with suppliers, securing grants, and managing budgets were all tasks he was familiar with. But now they had a different meaning. Every dollar saved, every resource acquired, was a step towards strengthening the community and enriching the lives of those who depended on the center. Lucas was equally dedicated, though his contributions were of a different nature. His hands-on approach and ability to connect with people on a personal level made him an indispensable part of the center's success. He was often seen fixing things around the building, organizing volunteer efforts, and mentoring the younger generation. Lucas had a way of making everyone feel welcome, of creating a sense of belonging that was crucial to the center's mission. He wasn't just Ethan's brother. He was a leader in his own right, someone who had earned the respect and admiration of everyone involved. Sophie's involvement in the community center was perhaps the most inspiring of all. As she grew older, her role in the center evolved. What began as simple volunteer work blossomed into a leadership position where she was responsible for organizing youth programs and outreach initiatives. Sophie had inherited the best qualities of both her father and uncle, Lucas's compassion and Ethan's drive, and combined them with her own vision for the future. She was passionate about creating opportunities for young people, particularly those who were disadvantaged or struggling. Under her guidance, the center's youth programs expanded significantly, offering mentorship, educational support, and creative outlets for teenagers who might otherwise have been overlooked. Sophie's commitment to the community center was deeply personal. It was a way for her to honor the legacy of her family and to continue the work that had brought them all together. The impact of the community center extended far beyond its walls. The revitalization of the building and the programs it offered had a ripple effect throughout the neighborhood. Property values began to rise, businesses flourished, and crime rates dropped. The sense of community that had been lost over the years was restored, and with it came a renewed pride in the neighborhood. People who had once felt disconnected or disenfranchised found a place where they belonged, where they could contribute and be valued. The center became a model for other communities, a shining example of what could be achieved when people came together with a common purpose. As the years went by, the community center became the centerpiece of Ethan's life. He no longer measured his success by the growth of his business empire or the size of his bank account, but by the lives he was able to touch and the positive change he could effect. The center was a living testament to the power of community and the importance of giving back. It was a place where Ethan could see the tangible results of his efforts, where the impact of his work was felt not in quarterly profits, but in the smiles of the people who benefited from the programs he helped create. Ethan's relationship with Lucas continued to grow deeper with each passing year. The shared experience of building and sustaining the community center had forged an unbreakable bond between them. The years of estrangement were now a distant memory, replaced by a partnership that was rooted in mutual respect, trust, and love. They had become more than just brothers. They were partners in a mission that had given their lives new meaning. Their bond was evident to everyone who came into contact with them, and it became a source of inspiration for others, a reminder that it is never too late to heal old wounds and build something meaningful together. As for Sophie, she blossomed into a strong, compassionate leader who was loved and respected by all who knew her. The community center had been a major part of her upbringing, shaping her values and her sense of purpose. She eventually went on to study community development and social work, bringing new ideas and innovations back to the center. Her work helped to expand the center's reach, bringing in more resources and enabling them to serve even more people. Sophie's dedication was unwavering, and it was clear that she had found her calling in life. The impact of the community center and the work Ethan, Lucas, and Sophie had done was not just felt in their own neighborhood. It rippled out into the wider world. News of their success spread, and soon other communities were reaching out, looking for guidance and support in creating their own centers. Ethan found himself traveling to other cities, sharing his experiences and helping to establish similar initiatives elsewhere. The network of community centers that grew from these efforts became a powerful force for positive change, each one a testament to the power of collaboration and the importance of giving back. As Ethan reached his late 60s, he began to think about the future. Not just his own, but the future of the community center and the legacy he would leave behind. He knew that he wouldn't be around forever, and he wanted to ensure that the work they had started would continue long after he was gone. He began to mentor the next generation of leaders at the center, passing on his knowledge and experience, and instilling in them the values that had guided his own journey. He also worked closely with Lucas and Sophie to create a long-term plan for the center's sustainability, ensuring that it would have the resources and leadership it needed to thrive in the years to come. The community center, once a dream of two estranged brothers, had become a lasting legacy. It was a place that had touched countless lives, transforming not just the neighborhood, but the people who had been a part of it. For Ethan, this legacy was the true measure of his success. He had found fulfillment not in the accumulation of wealth, but in the relationships he had built, the love he had given, and the positive impact he had made on the world around him. 20 years after the community center's grand reopening, Ethan's life had undergone a profound transformation. Now in his mid-60s, Ethan had long since stepped back from the day-to-day operations of his business empire, focusing instead on the community work that had become his true passion. He had moved out of his grand mansion and into a more modest but cozy home with Nina, a woman he had met through his involvement at the center. Nina was a warm, compassionate person who shared Ethan's commitment to service, and together they created a life filled with love, purpose, and fulfillment. Their home was a place of gathering, where family and friends would often come together to share meals, celebrate milestones, and enjoy each other's company. It was a stark contrast to the cold, empty mansion where Ethan had once lived, but it was a change he welcomed with open arms. The house was filled with laughter, warmth, and the tangible sense of connection that Ethan had once thought was beyond his reach. For Ethan, this was the life he had always wanted, though he hadn't realized it until much later in his journey. Ethan's relationship with Lucas remained as strong as ever. The two brothers had built a life together that was rooted in the values they had rediscovered through their work at the community center. They continued to collaborate on projects, mentor young leaders, and support each other in every way possible. Their bond was unbreakable, a testament to the power of forgiveness, understanding, and shared purpose. Lucas, who had once struggled to make ends meet, was now a respected leader in the community, known for his wisdom, kindness, and unwavering commitment to helping others. Sophie, now an adult, had taken on a leadership role at the community center, following in the footsteps of her father and uncle. She had grown into a compassionate, driven woman who was deeply committed to continuing the work they had started. Sophie's leadership had brought new energy and ideas to the center, expanding its reach and impact even further. She had started her own family, and her daughter, Clara, was already showing signs of the same curiosity, kindness, and drive that had defined Sophie's own upbringing. For Ethan, watching Sophie carry on the family legacy was a source of immense pride and joy. He saw in her the continuation of everything they had worked for, and he knew that the center was in good hands for the future. Ethan's granddaughter, Clara, was the light of his life. She was a bright, inquisitive child who loved spending time with her grandfather, listening to his stories, and exploring the world around her. Clara adored the community center, where she would often accompany Sophie, helping out in small ways and soaking up the positive atmosphere. Ethan loved watching Clara interact with the people at the center, seeing how she was already learning the values of empathy, service, and connection that had become so central to their family. Clara was a constant reminder of the future, of the generations that would carry on the work that had started so many years ago. As Ethan grew older, he found himself reflecting more and more on the journey that had brought him to this point. He thought about the choices he had made, the successes and failures, and the lessons he had learned along the way. He realized that his life's true wealth was not in the material possessions he had accumulated, but in the love and relationships he had nurtured. The mansion, the business empire, the accolades, all of these were fleeting compared to the lasting impact of the community center and the connections he had built with his family and community. Ethan often shared these reflections with Clara, who loved listening to her grandfather's stories. He wanted her to understand the importance of the choices we make, the value of giving back, and the power of love and connection to transform lives. He hoped that these lessons would guide her as she grew up, shaping the person she would become and the impact she would have on the world. For Ethan, this was his legacy, a legacy of love, service, and connection that would live on in Clara, Sophie, and all the people whose lives had been touched by the community center. As Ethan entered his twilight years, he knew that he had found true fulfillment. He had discovered the meaning of success not in the accumulation of wealth, but in the positive impact he had made on the lives of others. He had built a legacy that would endure long after he was gone, a legacy that was rooted in the values of family, community, and service. Ethan was at peace with the life he had lived, knowing that he had made a difference in the world and that the work he had started would continue for generations to come. In his final years, Ethan continued to be a presence at the community center, though his role had become more advisory than hands-on. He loved spending time there, seeing the new programs that Sophie had implemented, and meeting the people whose lives had been transformed by the center's work. The center was thriving, its impact reaching far beyond the neighborhood, and Ethan took great pride in knowing that he had played a role in its success. Ethan's health began to decline, as was inevitable with age, but he faced this final chapter of his life with the same grace and acceptance that had defined his later years. He was surrounded by love, by Nina, Lucas, Sophie, Clara, and the many friends and community members who had become like family to him. He knew that when the time came, he would leave this world at peace, knowing that he had lived a life of purpose, love, and connection. When Ethan passed away, the entire community mourned his loss, but they also celebrated his life. His funeral was a reflection of the man he had become, a gathering of family, friends, and community members whose lives he had touched in countless ways. The community center, which had been the cornerstone of his legacy, held a special memorial service in his honor, where people shared stories of how Ethan had made a difference in their lives. It was a powerful reminder of the lasting impact of one man's commitment to love, service, and connection. Sophie, Lucas, and Clara continued the work that Ethan had started, ensuring that the community center would remain a vibrant, thriving hub for generations to come. They carried on his legacy with pride, knowing that they were honoring the values that Ethan had instilled in them. The community center was more than just a building. It was a living testament to Ethan's life, a place where his spirit would continue to inspire and uplift others. Ethan's story is a powerful reminder that true wealth is not found in material possessions, but in the love we give, the connections we build, and the positive impact we leave on the world. It is a story of redemption, of the power of family and community, and of the enduring legacy of service and love. Ethan Maxwell's journey from a lonely millionaire to a beloved family man and community leader illustrates that the most valuable legacy we can leave behind is one of love, service, and connection, a legacy that will continue to inspire and uplift future generations.